First comment gets a shout out in the next video.
Diddy was running some kind of Epstein type deal where he was filming everybody. Genuinely love it when someone like Diddy gets caught though. I mean, he had a lot of people at those parties, right?
I was never at Diddy's party. I don't even know the motherfucker.
We're out
I
here
don't want to know nobody.
telling jokes.
Nobody.
If you don't have what they need, they're gonna leave. You gotta keep them there. You need locks on the doors. You need a lot of heat. You don't have no air conditioning. Heat affects the alcohol. Everybody gets a little bit more comfortable and loose. Builds up a nice little sweat. You need some good music, and you need me, of course.
Yes. So tell me about your birthday party. Am I invited?
Yes. Yes, you're definitely invited. I invite you to all my parties. You just haven't seemed to show up.
No, well, is it on the East Coast?
Yes.
Well, that's why. Why don't you have one here on the West Coast? Because I work all the time.
Okay, well, maybe I have one at your house.
Where's the...
The moment didn't happen in a courtroom or on a stage. It happened in conversation. Calm. Casual. Almost offhand. Joe Rogan asked a simple question that landed like a dropped glass in a silent room. Why was Ellen DeGeneres quiet while Sean Diddy Combs' name was suddenly everywhere for all the wrong reasons? No accusation. No verdict. Just a pause. And in that pause, the internet leaned forward. For years, Ellen's public image was built on kindness, humor, and approachability. Daytime TV. Dancing entrances. Celebrities laughing on white couches. She wasn't part of the dark side of Hollywood, at least not in the version people wanted to believe. At the same time, Diddy was known for power, wealth, and influence. Music, business, and legendary parties that blurred the line between fun and excess. Their worlds crossed publicly, more than once, always with smiles and jokes that seemed harmless at the time. But context changes everything. As legal trouble began to circle Diddy, old clips started resurfacing. Moments that once felt playful now felt awkward. Jokes about parties. Comments that lingered a second too long. Nothing illegal on its own. Nothing proven. But enough to make people uncomfortable. Enough to raise questions about who knew what, and who chose to say nothing. Silence became the loudest sound in the room. Joe Rogan didn't accuse Ellen of a crime. He didn't claim she was involved. What he questioned was something more subtle and more dangerous in Hollywood. The culture of protection. The habit of looking away. The way powerful people often stay silent when another powerful figure falls under scrutiny. Especially when that silence helps preserve reputations, friendships, and careers. For viewers, this wasn't really about Ellen or Rogan. It was about a pattern. The same one seen again and again when scandals break. Old footage gets rewatched. Words get reinterpreted. Laughter feels forced in hindsight. And people start asking whether those on the inside saw warning signs long before the public did. There is no evidence that Ellen committed a crime. There is no charge against her. That matters. But so does perception. In the age of archives and algorithms, silence can look like complicity, even when it isn't. And once that question is asked out loud, it doesn't disappear. Because the real tension here isn't about what was said. It's about what wasn't. If this opening has you thinking, hit like so more people see this breakdown. Share it with someone who's been following this story. Drop your thoughts in the comments, and make sure you're subscribed to Crime Decoder. First comment gets pinned. The deeper people looked, the more complicated the picture became. Ellen DeGeneres didn't exist in isolation. She was part of a tightly woven Hollywood network where relationships are currency and access is power. For decades, her show was a place where celebrities came to soften their image, promote projects, and remind the public they were likable. Appearances were friendly, controlled, and safe. That mattered, because safety is rare in an industry built on image management. Sean Diddy Combs fit neatly into that world for years. He wasn't just a music mogul. He was a brand. A gatekeeper. Someone whose approval could open doors or quietly close them. His parties were famous long before they became controversial. At the time, they were talked about as exclusive, glamorous, and over the top. In Hollywood, excess is often treated like entertainment, not a warning sign. That's where the red flags begin to form, not as explosions, but as patterns. Multiple celebrities joked about Diddy's parties over the years. Late-night laughs. Casual remarks. Stories framed as wild fun. But when legal allegations later surfaced against him, those same jokes took on a different weight. Viewers began asking whether the industry normalized behavior it shouldn't have, and whether laughter had been used to disguise discomfort. Again, no proof that Ellen knew of any crimes. But her proximity, like that of many others, suddenly mattered in the court of public opinion. Joe Rogan's comments struck a nerve because they tapped into a larger frustration. The sense that Hollywood reacts selectively. That it speaks loudly when silence is safe, and goes quiet when the stakes are high. Rogan didn't single out Ellen as a villain. He positioned her as a symbol of a system that often protects itself first. That framing spread fast, especially online, where nuance rarely survives. At the same time, Ellen herself had already faced criticism in recent years. Former staff members accused her show of having a toxic work environment. While investigations later concluded that management failures existed, Ellen apologized and took responsibility, though she denied personal wrongdoing. For many viewers, this history made it easier to believe that her public persona and private reality might not fully align. Fair or not, trust once shaken is hard to rebuild. This is how narratives snowball. Separate controversies start to overlap. Silence gets connected to past accusations. Association turns into suspicion. And suddenly, a question feels like a conclusion, even when it isn't. Still, it's critical to slow down here. There is a difference between being present in someone's orbit and being complicit in their actions. There is a difference between uncomfortable jokes and criminal behavior. That line matters, legally and ethically. But online, lines blur fast. And as more clips resurfaced, and more commentary piled on, one question refused to go away. If powerful people truly didn't know what was happening, why does their silence feel so familiar? If this chapter added clarity or raised new questions, like the video so it reaches more people. As the conversation spread, silence stopped being neutral. Online, it began to feel like a statement. Not because Ellen DeGeneres spoke in support of Diddy, but because she didn't speak at all. In past scandals, celebrities had rushed to distance themselves, issue statements, or express concern for alleged victims. This time, many noticed the absence of that familiar pattern. No carefully worded message. No acknowledgement. Just quiet. For the public, that quiet became suspicious. Social media filled the gap. Commentators replayed old interviews, slowed them down, clipped reactions, and framed moments as if they were clues in an investigation. A smile held too long. A laugh that sounded forced. Again, none of this proved anything. But in the age of online analysis, emotion often outweighs evidence. People weren't asking what Ellen did. They were asking what she might have seen. Joe Rogan's role here was less about exposure and more about amplification. He voiced a question many were already thinking but hadn't heard said out loud by someone with a massive platform. That changed the scale. When a thought moves from private speculation to public conversation, it takes on a life of its own. Suddenly, mainstream audiences were watching clips they had never seen before, through a much darker lens. This is where the story stops being about one person and starts being about culture. Hollywood has long been accused of operating under an unspoken code. Don't speak unless you have to. Don't challenge power unless it's already falling. Protect the brand. Protect the circle. For decades, that approach worked. But the internet doesn't forget, and it doesn't wait for official statements. Ellen's supporters argued that silence is not guilt. That legal processes should play out without celebrity commentary muddying the waters. They pointed out the danger of expecting entertainers to act as moral judges, especially when allegations are still unfolding. From that view, staying quiet is responsible, not suspicious. Critics saw it differently. To them, silence felt calculated. A way to avoid backlash while waiting to see which way public opinion would land. In that framing, not speaking was a form of self-preservation, not neutrality. And because Ellen built her brand on empathy and kindness, expectations were higher. When someone sells compassion, people expect to see it when things get uncomfortable. This tension is what keeps the story alive. Two interpretations, both plausible, both incomplete. And in between them sits a public figure who may have done nothing wrong, yet finds herself pulled into a storm she didn't create. The most unsettling part is how familiar this pattern feels. A powerful figure faces allegations. Their circle goes quiet. Old footage resurfaces. And the audience is left to decide who deserves the benefit of the doubt. If this chapter made you rethink what silence means, hit like so this video reaches more people. Share it with someone who follows Hollywood scandals closely. Drop your take in the comments, and make sure you're subscribed to Crime Decoder. Next, we look at how public judgment often arrives long before any legal conclusion. By the time the conversation reached its peak, the legal reality and the online narrative were moving at completely different speeds. Court filings, investigations, and allegations take time. Public opinion does not. In the digital world, verdicts are often formed before facts are fully known, and once those opinions harden, they rarely soften. Diddy's legal situation became the anchor point for everything. Allegations, lawsuits, and reports were treated as confirmation by some and as unproven claims by others. That divide mattered, because Ellen DeGeneres was never named as a defendant, witness, or suspect in any official case tied to him. There was no legal link. No charge. No filing. That is a critical fact that often got lost as commentary grew louder. Still, reputational damage doesn't require a courtroom. For Ellen, the issue wasn't law. It was trust. Once audiences start to question whether a public figure is being honest, every past moment gets re-examined. Her previous controversy around workplace culture added fuel, even though it was a separate issue with its own findings and outcomes. In the public mind, stories merged. Fairness became secondary to feeling. This is where the danger of true crime-style storytelling enters real life. When narratives are built around mystery and implication, viewers are trained to look for hidden meanings. That approach works when examining solved cases. But applied to ongoing situations, it can turn uncertainty into accusation. Ellen's silence became a blank screen onto which people projected their fears about Hollywood power and protection. Joe Rogan, intentionally or not, highlighted that tension. His question didn't claim guilt. It exposed discomfort. The kind that arises when people suspect that insiders know more than they say. Historically, that suspicion hasn't always been wrong. But history also shows how easily innocent people can be caught in the fallout. Some fans began calling for accountability without defining what accountability meant. A statement? An apology? Condemnation? Others pushed back, warning that demanding public confessions without evidence creates a culture of coercion, where speaking can be just as dangerous as staying silent. What remains clear is this: Ellen's story in this situation is not one of crime, but of association. And association, in moments like this, can be powerful enough to reshape a legacy. As the noise slowly began to settle, one question lingered under all the arguments. Are we witnessing exposure, or are we watching the internet turn discomfort into judgment? If this chapter helped you see both sides of the controversy, like the video to keep this conversation going. Share it with someone who values nuance. Share it with someone who values nuance. Leave your thoughts in the comments, and make sure you're subscribed to Crime Decoder. The final chapter brings everything together and asks what this moment says about us, not just celebrities. In the end, this story doesn't conclude with an arrest, a trial, or a sentence. It ends with uncertainty. Ellen DeGeneres was not charged. She was not accused in court. There is no evidence that she participated in or covered up any crime connected to Sean Diddy Combs. Those facts matter, and they must be stated clearly. But the impact of this moment goes beyond legality. What Joe Rogan's question exposed was not a secret, but a fracture. A growing distrust between the public and powerful figures who once felt untouchable. For years, celebrity culture taught audiences to accept curated images as truth. Smiles as sincerity. Jokes as harmless. This situation reminds people how fragile those assumptions are when context changes. Silence, in this case, became a mirror. Some saw restraint. Others saw avoidance. Both interpretations say more about the audience than the person being watched. In an era where every moment is archived, and every association is searchable, no one controls their narrative forever. Especially not when past relationships collide with present allegations. For Ellen, the legacy question is unresolved. Her career reshaped daytime television. Her brand centered on kindness. Whether this controversy fades quietly or lingers as a footnote depends less on facts and more on memory. Public memory is selective, emotional, and rarely patient. It does not wait for final outcomes. For Hollywood, this moment reinforces an uncomfortable truth. The old rules of silence no longer work the way they used to. Staying quiet doesn't stop speculation. It often feeds it. At the same time, speaking without facts can destroy lives. That tension has no easy answer. And for viewers, there is a responsibility too. True crime and exposé culture can inform, but it can also distort. Questioning power is necessary. So is resisting the urge to turn questions into conclusions. As this chapter closes, the story leaves us with something more unsettling than guilt or innocence. A reminder of how quickly narratives form, and how hard they are to undo. So here's the question I want to leave you with. In a world where silence can look like guilt and speech can look like strategy, how should we judge public figures when the facts are still unfolding? If you found this breakdown thoughtful, hit like to support the channel. Share it with someone who enjoys deeper conversations, subscribe to Crime Decoder, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's next. Drop your answer to that question in the comments, I'm reading the first ones.